Dallas has just been on a tear. I believe we can attribute that to Jason Robertson. Also, Jake Ottinger, who's really stepped in.
Yeah, so we can compare a rookie QB to a toddler. Hayward's absence for this game will be significant, and I wouldn't be surprised if this game turns into a blowout as of late.
The Golden Knights just can't pull it. I really think the Avalanche are determined this year.
They made so many moves and grabbed so many guys that they have to win a championship or at least make the finals. They were on our championship and bust.
The same self, the only year he won an MVP was the year he cheated, which really should put something against that MVP. But
Yeah, and as a Cowboys fan, I have learned how dangerously good Aaron Rodgers has been with he can just thread a pass.
Hello, I am Ruby Ackerman, and you are listening to Outsider's Opinion with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NFL Opinions of the Week. I'm Kevin, and I'm joined by the man that does not have a bad team, Austin.
You're right. And when we say bad team, I don't necessarily mean like, oh, that team sucks or oh this, oh that. It's more how many teams have bad records. Kevin, there are 8 teams in the NFL that have 3 or less wins. 3 or less. 8 of them.
Dang.
Is that not a lot?
That does seem like a lot. How many of them are in the AFC? I feel like more are in the be the AFC.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6.
Yep.
6 in the AFC.
Yep.
Yeah, there are. It does seem, because I was looking at tanking, and it does seem it's hard for a team to get in the top 10 like the Cowboys. I think they're at 12, and they're at 4 wins. So
They're at 5 wins.
they're at 5 wins? Oh, yeah, they are at 5 wins. That's my bad.
They were almost at 6 if they didn't touch the punt.
Oh, geez, yeah. That was bad. Yeah. So, yeah, it does. I think it's kind of based on who they play. And they're just, I think some teams have taken risks. Like, I want to say, because it's not, to me, it's not an advert tanking in the NFL.
Well, that's why the question is bad teams, not tanking teams. There's 8 teams in the NFL right now that have a losing streak. A streak to me is 3 straight. So if you've lost 3 straight, I consider that a streak. So there's 8 teams that have lost at least 3 straight. With the Raiders having lost 9, Giants 8, Chicago 7, and so on. That's a lot of teams that are losing a lot. And some of these teams, like the Patriots have a 462 strength of schedule, which is extremely low. To compare that to the rest of the teams in the league, they're lower than Detroit, lower than Kansas City. They have a harder schedule than Philly. They have a harder schedule than Washington. They have a harder schedule than Miami. So they have the 4th easiest schedule or 5th easiest schedule in the NFL, and they're 3-10.
Yeah, to me, the Patriots are just bad. It's the other teams. The Jaguars, they're dealing with injuries, but to me, the Raiders, because they were a team that kept relatively the same roster. They just got rid of Devontae Adams, and I guess they did lose Josh Jacobs. But still, to have a fall off like that, I do think there are seasons where there are just bad teams. But it definitely because I think teams took risks. I want to say the Browns took a risk with Watson. They didn't think it was a risk at the time. Actually, I do think you can say that Watson was a risk because of everything going on around him. It's just they thought they were willing to ignore that stuff. because they thought they were
Mhm.
getting a good quarterback. Then he's one of the terrible quarterbacks, gets injured, and I bet that's hurting them as well. Uh, so I think it's just kind of the way things are, and there's just some really bad teams. I think this is just what happens sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and this is something that I see a lot of teams. They just it seems like teams are fighting themselves when it comes to winning games. I don't really think it's tanking. It's just beating themselves. And there's a lot of teams right now that I'm like, wow, that team just beat themselves. And it happens often.
Yeah, I think, yeah, teams are beating themselves, and I think with the Bears is they took risks, and there were definitely those losses were beating themselves. We talked about that. Raiders, I think it's a coaching issue. Um, I thought Antonio Pierce was going to be a good coach, or at least not a bad coach. There were just a lot of bad coaches, I think, on those teams. Um, you could argue, I would say bad coaches in Pierce. I would still argue Peterson, given just how that goes, but you do have the injuries. Not Stefanski. Um, and some are bad coaching, and some are just bad rosters. It's because that to me, that's what's happening with. Um, I'm trying to think of with the Patriots is just bad roster from Bill Belichick, who just wasn't a great GM in the final years of when he was coaching the Patriots. So I think this is just a cycle. You will have some of these teams will be really good and they're just bad. Or you have teams that are still have been bad, like the Bears and the Browns in just the past 10 years. And they're trying to get out of that, but it's still taking some time.
A lot of teams are like, oh, we made it out. And then they're just drawn back into the abyss that is losing football.
Yeah, to me, that's the Browns. I think the Bears could come out of it with Caleb, but it's still yet to be seen. It's hard to do that in 1 year. Um, but yeah, I don't. Yeah, to me, it's not guys tanking. It's just they're trying to do stuff and it hasn't worked. And you're kind of seeing the result of it. And some teams have been better than expected, like the Vikings, just given with their quarterback issues over the offseason. People thought they were going to be bad. So to me, this is just kind of the cycle in the NFL. Um, because I think a few years ago, were we talking about parity in the NFL or lack of parity?
It probably was lack of parity, but because I don't think of the NFL as a parity league. I think of that as like the NHL as a parity league.
Yeah. To me, maybe it happens every year. I just feel like, oh, there are going to be so many good teams, and then just some teams are just bad. And you can never really guess. Sometimes, like the Niners are bad, or they're just okay. They've dealt with injuries, but not in the terms of 3 wins. That is just really bad. And so I don't think there's much else to say. I just think this is kind of the way things go, and how do teams respond off this?
Yeah. Uh, it is. I think it's really hard, especially in football, because you play so little games. The snowball gets rolling a lot faster, and for these bad teams, it just becomes a bad to worse so fast. In the NBA, you can lose 7 straight games and still make the playoffs. In football, losing 4 is a death sentence in a row.
Yeah, that's a great point. The wins are magnified just because there are so little games. And I that's what I like about football. And you just have to think about not adding more games. Because we've talked about that with the NFL. Wanting to add more, and we're just like, no, that doesn't work physically. And it really comes on the culture of the team of just can they stop that ball rolling, and it takes a lot. Um And you can flip it the other way. A team can get on a hot streak and get a couple wins together. Because the Bengals were at 4 last night. And so we could see them starting to go on a run, but they still may not make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy to me that they still have only 5. I mean, right now they have a higher pick than the Cowboys.
really, still, dang.
Yeah, 11.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's shocking to me. I want to see another team that's shocking. Probably is the Jaguars. Like they're this bad. I know there are injuries, but still, they look to be a team that was questionable. And just some teams, it hasn't. They were either going to be good or we thought they'd be mediocre. Instead of just being good, they're just bad. I think you could say that about the Bears. That's what's happening to them. Okay, well, they won't be great. If they're not great, they'll just be okay. But no, you mentioned they're struggling.
Yeah, the Bears have lost 7 straight.
Dang, it's crazy, especially after they started above 500. And yeah, it just kind of shows what can happen. You can start hot and then you reach the middle of the season. Because I want to say some of those teams, like the Saints started hot. I don't think they're at the 3. I think they're probably at 4 or 5. But teams can start hot and then they get to the middle of the season. So it's kind of keeping that momentum and just kind of that going through the long season. So that is all I have. I'll let you close this one out.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Please let us know if one of your teams is one of those teams that we said was bad. Did you think the season was going to be bad? How is next season going to look? And please catch us in our next video.